2、3
3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, how we doing? I'm gonna focus on me here for a second. Welcome back. It's another one of these Azure FunBytes. My name is Jay Gordon, and every week we get together and we talk a little bit about fundamentals with Azure. And last week, I really want to apologize to you. I had some stuff going on. I couldn't be here as part of the stream, and because of that, I missed it. But we rescheduled, and that's all that matters is that we're here. We're going to talk a little bit today about some subjects that I think are going to be real interesting to you. As always, I'd love to hear you take part in our conversation. There are the open comments. I'd love to see some questions, and obviously, we've got an incredible guest in Brian Kettleson. We'll get to him in just a minute, but I want to start off with this week's video and what we're going to talk about. So this week, we're going to talk about creating a Linux virtual machine. And then while we do that, we're going to solve a couple of problems. So first of all, we need a virtual machine. So we're going to show you how to build one. And then after that, Brian has got a lot of great information about using Go as an application language to build interesting web apps. He's got something to show off today. And then after that, what we're going to do is show that, let's say the application that Brian's running needs to share a bunch of lazy loaded files between it. We'll show how to add Azure Files to our VMs, and then we'll destroy the whole thing. And by the end of it, we'll learn a little bit about Brian and talk about what's going on in his world. So I'm going to go ahead and switch the video. And then after we finish the video, we'll get into this week's conversation and, of course, with Brian. So, hey, welcome back to Azure FunBytes. My name is Jay Gordon. Let's get into it.
Creating an Azure Linux virtual machine with Azure CLI is simple. Let's get started with creating a new VM with Ubuntu Linux. To get started, I'll open the Cloud Shell, then create a resource group where our VM will live. You can create Azure VMs by using the portal, or open up a Cloud Shell or terminal on your local computer and use the Azure CLI tools or even PowerShell.
Hi, I'm Dean Bryan, Cloud Advocate here at Microsoft. In 2014, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said Microsoft loves Linux, and the ease and speed of setting up Linux machines on Azure is proof of that. Whenever I personally need to do some work on a Linux machine, I just spin up a virtual machine in Azure. It takes a couple of minutes, and before you know it, I'm logging onto my Red Hat, Ubuntu, or a custom image Linux machine just within a few clicks or CLI commands. So bring your Linux workloads over to Azure.
We're asking for Azure Resource Manager, or ARM, to provide us with the latest version of Ubuntu long-term support available on Azure. To make sure we're asking for the right image, we can run the following command to see what's available. Cool, let's build the VM. Let's take a look at the command we'll invoke. Once I hit enter, this will tell Azure Resource Manager that you'd like to create a new virtual machine within the resource group FunByte with the VM name FunByte VM Linux. Your server will use the Ubuntu LTS image, create a sudo-enabled admin user named Ubuntu, and will generate SSH keys that will be stored in the Cloud Shell. In only a few moments, the Azure Resource Manager will respond with all the information you need, including your VM's public and private IP addresses. Now I should be able to SSH into the public IP and view my new Linux VM.
Now that I'm SSH'd in, I'm ready to start using my new virtual machine. If you'd like to learn more about this, or if you'd like $200 of free credit of Azure, just check out this link. I'll see you next time for Azure FunBytes. That was fun, wasn't it? I try to make those cute and fun. And speaking of both cute and fun, I've got my guest today. His name is Brian Kettleson. How you doing, Brian? Let me unmute you. Sorry there.
There we go. How about that?
I think that works. Welcome aboard. It's always cool to have another person that's part of our little Azure advocacy world. Excuse me if I'm looking to the left for a second. That's where my screen was. Now I'm all set up. So, Brian, thank you so much for being part of this today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm kind of excited.
So, before we kind of get into what we're going to do from a technical standpoint and really get into it, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about you. I really have gotten a chance to spend some time and talk with you, go places, but not everybody that's watching this gets that real opportunity. So let's first talk a little bit about you, Brian. How long have you been doing work in technology?
Just shortly after the Mesolithic period, I think. I got my first job in tech when I got out of the Army in 1992 or 93. I can't even remember which now. That's how long ago it is. I started as a billing technician, basically a clerk at the first internet service provider in Wyoming. And hadn't really programmed professionally before, but I had an Amiga and IBM PC and Tandy 1000 when I was a kid. So did a lot of personal programming. And the billing system that we had at this ISP was so ridiculously hand done, writing billing numbers on the back of 3x5 cards. Mm-hmm. So I downloaded Microsoft Access and couldn't tell you which version it was, but it was probably 1 or 2 or something, just really, really early. And
that beginner's world into databases, right?
Yeah, well, it's the beginner's world into everything. I think, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said that Visual Basic for applications is pretty much that gateway drug into programming for so many people. And it was for me. Mm-hmm. I automated all of the billing. And when the billing kind of outgrew Access, I used Access as a front end to SQL Server. And when we outgrew the Access interface, then I just started writing Visual Basic apps for directly into SQL Server. And, so many years later, I've done everything from sysadmin work to DBA to data warehouse technician to architect. I've been a COO, a CIO, a CTO. I've done it all and had so much fun along the way.
A lot of C's.
A lot of O's.
Well, I'm really glad that I get to kind of do what I do alongside you as an Azure advocate. I think that we get sometimes forget that our team is filled with all these incredible different personalities that have so many skill sets that when I do get to spend some time talking with y'all, it's always a huge reminder of just the bench that we have of talent.
Yeah, it's so much fun on our team because there's literally somebody that knows everything that you need to know. You can reach out to somebody and get that answer.
Yeah, that's the way I feel.
And that's really fun.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk a little about something that I think you got a little bit of knowledge of based on, your profile and the things you do. And we're going to talk a little bit about Linux and Linux on Azure. And specifically, we'll build a VM. We'll do some stuff with it today. You'll help me through the process. We'll even show how you can do some shared remote administration with your pal, which is what we'll kind of do using a tool that's built into Linux called Tmux. So, nice. Brian, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a screen. And if you're following us, please do. You can follow at AzureFunBytes. And then obviously I also put Brian's information there. You can find Brian on Twitter. But what we're going to do, I think, Brian, is we're going to start off with just some real basic information that we're going to have everyone capable of doing on their own. So the first thing I want everyone to see here is we've got this Linux on Azure learning path within Microsoft Learn. And so a lot of things that we're going to do today, you can get this exact kind of introduction by building simple virtual machines. And then within those virtual machines, manipulate them, destroy, create, replicate them, and create really resilient applications with fault tolerance built in, all these things that I know is important to people who build applications. So Brian, let me ask you: do you do most of your work within containers? Or are you doing a lot still in VM environments? Where are you doing most of your deployments nowadays?
It depends on who I'm deploying for. When I deploy, it's half and half. I guess I couldn't pick one that I do more than the other. I've got an internal kind of like my personal intranet at home, and that's all containers in Minicates and Docker. Then I've got some things that are exposed to the bigger world, and those are on one or more Azure VMs and not in containers. I typically use systemd for Go binaries or things that don't necessarily need a container.
Sure. So you're still working with traditional VM environments that I think a lot of people still need to use, regardless of how great we can containerize everything.
Yeah, I love containers, and for me, I threw away the idea that containers were the security panacea a long time ago. I know that there may be some more security in containers, but there's still Linux, and everybody's running as root anyway, so they're not that secure. So that argument for me doesn't carry a lot of weight. But the nice thing about containers is that it especially in deployment, it can insulate the host system from all of the things that you might need to install. So I really appreciate that when I'm doing a lot of things that are, what's the word, dynamically configured. Deploying a JavaScript app, beautiful thing to do in a Docker container.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many node modules, there's just so much you can do to screw up the host system if you have competing installations. Whereas a Go binary is static. You can install 50 different Go apps on the same machine and none of them screw each other up. So with the Go binaries, I tend to use something like just systemd and run them.
Gotcha. So we're going to get started today by, we're going to build some stuff. Isn't that right, Brian? The basis of what we're going to do is just about building things. So yeah. I think based on what you talked about and the application we're going to work with, and I'll bring it up really quickly. So you want to give us just a little background on this app that you're sharing with us today?
Sure. This is a fun app that I wrote about 2 years ago. One of the things that's kind of annoying about being a developer advocate is the fact that we have to do so much slide editing. I hate using PowerPoint or Keynote. I want my slides to be text mode so I can edit them in a text editor and then just publish them somewhere. So this app is called Slides, and what it does is allow you to, it creates a local Reveal.js working environment for you, and then gives you a development server. So you can do things like slides new my fancy talk, and it will create a markdown file called my fancy talk. And then you can type slides dev, and it brings up a split screen that shows you your markdown on the left side of the web browser and the actual Reveal.js slideshow on the right side. And it's live editing. So you edit on the left, you see your changes on the right, which is a real treat when it comes to Markdown and Reveal.js, because usually you have to do the hot reload and saving, and it's just a pain.
Sure.
The last thing that this app does is you can try slides build, and it will take your Markdown slides and create a public directory and export them all to HTML. And then you can put that on whatever favorite web hosting platform you have, put it behind Nginx, whatever you want to do. And it's a personal portfolio of your talks.
Sweet. So why don't we get to the whole business of getting this online? What do you say?
I'm in.
All right. So there are a couple different ways for us to create virtual machines in Azure. Because I want to explain a little bit of the process, why don't we talk through doing it here in the portal? What do you say, Brian?
Sure.
Okay. And I don't know why this is going on. I'm trying to also invoke a Cloud Shell in the background. So let's try this as well. Maybe just having some timeouts. These things happen. All right, there we go. Now I got a Cloud Shell for when Brian and I are going to SSH into this machine. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to Ubuntu server 1804 LTS. Essentially, we could just type here virtual machines, or we can go to where I just did before. You can click just the good old create a resource. Either way, but there's a bunch of different ways you can do it through Azure Resource Manager. One of them is the portal. Another, as we saw in today's video, was via the CLI. There's Azure Resource Manager templates, and then obviously straight API calls using whatever language that you want to that is supported by the SDK. So these are all just like basic concepts of software. Nothing too out there, but we're going to use the portal because it's super duper point, click, and go, right?
That's my favorite. I like using ARM templates when we're doing something big, but creating a single VM straight to the portal every time.
Cool. So let's go ahead and create. We need to put it in a resource group. Why? Because everything on Azure is a resource. And where do we keep our resources? In groups. So we're just going to call it here, Brian FunBytes is what we're going to call it. That's going to be our resource group. Now we're going to give our VM a name. We're just going to call it VM demo. That's it. Nothing special today. The region. So we can pick all the different data centers, which are a collection of availability zones, which are individual data centers within a region. So we need to pick where we're going to keep our server. And I'm East US. I believe you're East US. So why don't we stick to where we are? All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, so now we talk about our availability options for infrastructure redundancy. So now we can create availability sets for, say, a set of servers that we're going to run basically the same exact software on. We're going to have look exactly the same. That's going to provide us with some redundancy. Or we can keep fault domains. So we can keep one server in an availability zone, and that availability zone will allow us to fault between a number. And so typically a region will have 3 availability zones. So we can put a server with replicated information on it through whatever way we do our deployment to have the same exact thing. And if one of those regions fails with one of our availability zones, then what we can do is ensure that our application stays up. Because if one goes down and the other 2 stay up, our application's up. Sound good? We're only going to do a demo today, so we're not going to be using any redundancy. We're going to use the Ubuntu LTS image for 1804, which means long-term support. And so if once this is no longer an actively developed version of Ubuntu, there's a commitment to providing patches to make sure that security issues are always taken care of. I know, Brian, it's been a pain for me to always keep up, but I know how important it is to make sure we're patching and our patch levels are set. And I think, at least with LTS, you know you're going to be okay for a little while.
Yeah, and I always set my Ubuntu installs to auto security update at a minimum.
So now we can just pick the size we want. We're going to go with a pretty. Let's use our cloud privilege here. What do you say, Brian?
Fire it up.
Well, let's use this 8 gigabyte machine with 2 vCPUs. It'll give us a little bit quicker setup. So now what we can do is create a public key pair, but I want Brian and I to kind of share this today. So we're going to do the awful thing of creating a password. I would much rather you use an SSH key, but for today, we're going to just create a user. We're going to call it FunBytes. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a password, and I'm going to send it to Brian in a very private way that none of you will see because we work in privacy here. So here is our super secure and easy to remember by copying and pasting password that Brian and I will share. And so what I'll do is I'll just copy this thing here. And let's pop this password so we'll have it. Like I said, I really don't care for password off. And I know, Brian, you and I talked about this for a second. It sucks, but it's just going to make it easier for the moment, right? So I'm going to open up some ports. I'm going to have port 80, port 443, and port 22 open. This is so we can do some web inbound and SSH in so that we can actually do our installation. Sound good? Next, we'll pick our disks. We can add an additional disk if we want to actually keep our application on and separate our operating system for our app. We're not going to do that today because we don't really need to. This is a demo. We'll go through networking. And here we can create our virtual network. It's automatically done for us. It rules. We can then actually use an advanced Nginx security group. So we can actually say, well, I don't want to open up these to the world. I only want to open up, say, to my and Brian's IP address. This is a demo. We're not going to do that today. Load balancing and accelerated networking, essentially just providing you on accelerated networking, it's low latency, it's higher network transfer. Load balancing is exactly what it sounds like. You could take a bunch of servers, put them behind a load balancer, and serve them together for high availability or least active, whichever your requirements are. Management. Brian mentioned some automatic boot updates that you could do, or I should say OS updates. You can do that through here. You can enable Azure Security System, all these things to make sure that you're remaining secure. We'll go advanced. Cloud init is super, super useful for people that want to run some sort of bootstrap before their server comes back online or comes online. We can also install extensions that allow us to use some other services. So if I wanted to write a custom script that gets started at boot time, I have a particular agent that I want installed on my VM, I could do it through an extension. We could also use things like third-party extensions for something like Chef for configuration management, or Datadog for some monitoring. All right, so you ready to create this thing, Brian?
Let's do it.
All right, so now what we're going to do is just click Review and Create. And so the Azure Resource Manager is going to look at all the things that we've decided to create. And so let's see, what did our validation fail? Let's see what the details were for our validation failing. Resource was done. Oh, so you know what this is? This is Azure Security Center. This is great. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back here to networking. So what Azure Security Center did is tell us you can't open up these ports to the world. We're not going to let you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to advanced, and we're going to go to this network security group. And so we've got this rule 22 to the world. We're not going to want to do that. What we're going to do is actually, we're going to make the source an IP address. I'm going to get my IP address. I can just do curl. I can has IP. There's my IP address of my computer. And what's cool is we're also going to make it so that we can log in through the Azure Cloud Shell. And so we won't need to do this, but we want to just make sure we set up something by default so that I can log in. All right, so we've gone ahead and we've configured our security rule to lock down what we need. I'm going to give an individual a unique name. We'll save it. And so now we only allow SSH to one IP address. Okay, let's do review and create. So that's the great thing about Azure Resource Manager is it's going to do some validation. It's going to make sure we passed. So it's going to make sure we're adhering to policies. So Azure Security Center, have you messed around with that at all, Brian?
I have, yeah. It's really awesome.
So what we have is our department. We have one giant subscription. And that subscription has a policy associated with it. And that policy essentially states we can't create virtual machines with no real server security. We need to have at least, at minimum, network security closed up to the world. So we're going to get this VM ready. And then if you want to bring up a Cloud Shell, Brian, what we'll do is we'll both SSH into this machine using that username and password that I gave you. So it's just FunByte and then that. And so what I'll ask you to do, just log in via the Cloud Shell. And once this comes up, and then what we'll do is we're going to use something called tmux. And that's going to be a way for the two of us to kind of work together a little bit and share resources. We'll get to that in just a second. So our VM is done deploying. And so all I need to do is go here to connect. We're going to get our IP address. So I'll share this with you as well. There you go. So what we're both going to do is we're going to go in through the Cloud Shell, which is already going to permit us, because we're not doing it from our local computer. We're actually going to be doing it through the Azure Cloud Shell. And we both have a shared password. We're going to both use this password. We're going to log into our machine together. Okay. Great.
Are you in?
Yeah, I'm in.
Huh.
Let me see if it's via the Cloud Shell. You should be able to get in. But what I'll do is I'm going to add your IP in just in case. So I'm going to go to networking. So if we already added my IP address as a permitted SSH allower, and now I'm going to allow his as well. So I'll go to add import. We'll go to networking for the VM. We'll go to add inbound security rule. We're going to say that the source is an IP address. So IP is this, and the range is just /32. That's one individual IP address. We're going to say that the port range he's allowed in is port 22, which is the standard for SSH. We'll add a name here, 22 Brian, and then it gets a priority number of 1011, which is the next incremented. So now you should be able to SSH in once this created security rule is done. And then, all right, so you're there, you're set. You should be able to SSH in.
Oops.
So while he's SSHing in, remember, if you'd like to join us in any way, you can comment on Twitter. You can also leave us some comments, and we'll be happy to answer some questions for you. So you let me know when you're SSH'd in, Ryan.
I'm working on it.
So I'm going to share with everybody an article that I think is going to help you understand what we're going to do next. So we've solved our first problem today. Our first problem is that we needed a virtual machine to work on. And then we need the two of us to be able to work on it at the same time. And we want to see what's going on. So based on that, we're going to make it really, really simple and just log in. Okay, so Brian's in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start using something known as TMUX. And it's a terminal mutexer, if I'm right, is what it stands for?
Multiplexer.
Multiplexer, okay. And so what we can do is create a shared session. And so to create a shared session, we can just use this. And I'm just going to TMUX new session -s shared. And so now what Brian can do on his side is run this command. And then watch, I'm going to have my hands up, and he's going to be able to talk. There you go. Look at this. Heli from Brian. Look at that. So we're able to actually do some mutual administration here without actually needing to do anything special. So, yes, all your base. Absolutely. So the next part of this really is we're going to work to install the Slides app, right?
Yep.
So to start doing this, we're going to need some dependencies. So let's talk about the depths that you think we're going to need to get this running. And if you want to, we're going to just sudo, because we're going to need sudo to do all this. Why don't you talk me through what dependencies you think we need to install, Brian?
Sure. Let's. I'm going to go to the golang.org website.
So I'm going to switch. You want to bring up your screen, and we can have you share your screen here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Hang on.
Sure.
Which screen I would get if I did that? Here. There we go.
All right. So now I'm going to make yours kind of the
Other way.
Let me just go away.
There we go. So the installation for instructions for Go, you can install it with a zip file or a tar file that you download, or you can install it from a package manager. It doesn't matter to me which way we do it. I can show you my favorite way to install Go, which is from bash script. I've got a bash script in setup right here. That's what we need. And then once we do that, we need to make sure that user local go bin is in our path.
And so at this point, you're just really essentially copying and pasting this kind of stuff.
We can download this shell script from the internet. I mean, that's fun.
Gotcha. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's bring up this shell script and go ahead and install what you need. Sure. Cool. So you grab the shell script and let's cat and take a look at it. So you can also find this on your, if I'm right, you said this is something in your GitHub that we can grab?
Right. This is something in my .files, which is at...
yeah, I'm going to grab the...
bkettleson.files, this URL here. I'm going to put that somewhere.
Awesome. Thank you. That's very, very helpful for people. If you want to do a Go installation to follow along what exactly we're doing, this is the perfect place for you to do it.
I'm going to make it executable. So chmod plus X. And then let's just talk really quickly about what the bash script does. Because the Go installation is always static, that nothing changes inside the installation directory, you can blow away the old one and reinstall over the top of it. So I always remove the old Go installation first, and then I'm going to make user local Go as a directory, download the Go version that I specified up above, and then run tar to extract it to the user local Go directory and strip the first path off so that we don't have go/go. So it'll just be all of the files under there. So if I run it, it's fast. And now if we ls user local go, see our Go installation. So the important thing that we need to worry about is making sure that the Go bin is in our path if we're going to be writing Go code. I don't know if we're going to be doing that as root, so we don't need to change our path now. I suspect we'll be using the FunBytes user when we get to be installing and running Go things.
Sorry, I forgot when I remove myself. You can't hear me. So we're getting closer to get it to a point to deploy. But before we do this, I also want to install the web server that this is going to run off. So those are going to be our two big dependencies that we're working with. And so I'm going to switch here for a second, and I'm going to come back in. All right?
Cool.
So let's do this. Cool. All right, so what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to go over to my GitHub, and I actually have kind of a quick bash script that we can use as well. So let's go to, I have like this VM installation script. It's in this React Clock Basic, and if you go in and view the code, and you go into other, I have this VM install script. It's pretty useful for just a basic need to install just about any, I should say, installing Nginx on almost any machine. And so what I'm really going to do is just copy and paste the Nginx install. It's all we really need here. So I'm just going to grab the sysctl information that we're going to update for open files. Then what we do is we go here and we install Nginx. And then what we do is we remove the default file. So what port are we going to need, Brian?
8080, and then whatever you want for the base port. So 80 and 443 if you're going to do standard stuff.
Yeah, 80 is fine. So this is the configuration file here for the actual 8080 redirect. This is just a proxy that exists that This is an HTTP server that sits on the front end, and on the back end, I believe we're going to be just using Golang. And Golang is going to produce, is it like a web server, would you say?
Yeah, so we have two web properties that we're going to serve. We're going to serve our Go application itself, and then we're going to serve static directory. Gotcha. So we can use Nginx with just a location that serves from the file system. Mm-hmm. And then the other one with a proxy pass for slides.
Gotcha. So we're just going to wait a second while this installation finishes. It's almost done. So what's going on now, for those of you who may not know, is Ubuntu went to the package manager. It grabbed all the required packages to install Nginx and then got it running. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to touch the default file that it's all going to live within. And so I could just cat this into the file, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to VI, because I'm an old Vim user like a lot of us. And I'm just going to go VI etc Nginx, sites available, default. And then what I'm going to do in here, we've got our default Nginx server. Let's just go ahead and delete everything in here. And then we're going to take this default stuff that we want to use, and we're just going to pop it in here. So this is just how our server is going to start up, what it's going to start up, and where it's going to start up. So essentially all it wants to do is look on localhost, which is the server itself, and then go to port 8080, which is the app that I believe you're going to go with next, right? So yep. I'm going to go ahead and reload Nginx. Let's curl localhost. Okay, Nginx is up. It's got a bad gateway. That's good. That means that the proxy's set up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get out of here again. I'm going to let you kind of show them off what you're going to do next.
All right. So we've done all the root installation bits for now, right? So I'm going to pop back out of the root user, because I try never to run anything as root when I'm working. So let's see, do we have a bash RC or anything? We do. So let's edit our bash RC. And we're going to, is there a path in here? Nope. I'm just going to be lazy and export path equals user local bin go in, then the original path. So we're going to insert go into our path.
Yep. So what Brian just did there is, in order for him to properly use Go needs to exist within the actual path of where he's working from. So he's going ahead and stating this is where the binary for Go exists. When I ask for Go, this is where you go to get it.
It would be useful if I use the right directory, user local go bin.
You know,
so let's try that again.
This is a fundamental stream. We all make mistakes. Nope. So this is where Go is. And now we're actually ready to start using Go. So you want to show us what your next little trick up your sleeve is?
Yeah. So do we have Git installed? I never know anymore when on an Ubuntu VM whether it's going to have Git or not. So we do. So let's go into, let's make a directory. Source. And let's clone that project, github.com, B. Kettleson slides. If we look at this directory, it's a Go app. It's got a make file. Let's cat that. It's too big. Let's vim it. So this make file just installs the slides app. It builds it locally. And then it's got, this is all of the things that I use for releasing different versions of it. So it's just cheat codes for releasing. So we really don't need this. We can just go build. So when we type go build, it's going to build this app. It'll download all the dependencies into the user's cache. And when we're done, we'll end up with a file called slides that's executable, and it'll be here locally.
So this is going from like a package manager, and it's grabbing all these different dependencies.
Right. It's grabbing the different Go modules that we're importing.
I can see
So
Steve Francia's updates right in here too.
Yeah, he wrote PFlag and Cobra and Viper, and all of those are used pretty heavily in this app because I use Cobra for all of my Go command line apps. It's just really comfortable and easy to use. So we've got this.
For those of you who don't know, Steve Francia is one of the lead Go developers, if I'm right. Google, from what I recall.
I think he's not on the Go team anymore. I think he's been promoted up into open source management at Google. I can't speak for him though. I don't know. I think he's up and above Go now.
Another former MongoDBer like myself.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so we've got our app compiled. It's called Slides. So let's just run it and see if it works. Does. So it says it's a tool for live editing, previewing, and publishing reveal.js slide decks.
Cool.
And our available commands are build, dev, help, init, new, and version. And the first thing we want to do is init. So I'm going to go to the home directory here, and I'm going to make a hops directory. And then I'm going to run slides. Oh, wait, I've got to move slides somewhere where it's in the path. So let's go into source slides and let's
So there's a quick question I want to answer. Why are we swapping between presenters? Only because there's some certain stuff I want to show you in the portal. So there's been some browser stuff that I've been doing, as well as just the basics around the terminal. I just wanted to show you basically that we have a similar view regardless of my computer or his computer. So I hope that explains it a little better.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter which of the computers we use, but when Jay switches back to his view, he can use his browser, and that's pretty much it. So let's go back into our talks directory. And if I type slides init, and then requires at least one arg. What arg does it need?
So it just wanted a name for the site.
I guess so.
I guess to provide the directory. Got it. Makes sense.
All right, that was unnecessary. I forgot that part. So let's go into that Brian directory now. And what we have here is it's two pieces. So these are the static assets that we need to create a slideshow. And then they're the dynamic bits, the slides themselves, that we edit to make our slideshow. So if we type, let's see, slides dev, it's going to open up port 8080 with a web server. Now, do we have our Nginx instance running?
Yep.
And reverse proxying to 8080?
Correct. And so I've got the IP address. And so let's take a look at the IP once we go there now. So you can see here on the side that the application served. And so all I'm going to do, and let's show you, so we're going to go to home. We're going to go to VM demo, which is the VM we just created. And so we want to get the public IP address. It was shown to us in I think in JSON before when we were trying to just log in, but or when we created the VM. But you can also get it right here from the VM profile. And if we go to the IP address, let's see what
I'm guessing that we don't have port 80 open to the internet.
Yep. So that's a problem. We can't actually get to the website until we open the port. So we go here to networking, just like we did SSH before. And then it's going to ask me for add an import about port rule, because remember, it didn't let us do blanket rules to allow anything. It wanted us to be more specific. So now we're going to say this time, though, the source can be any, and the source port can be any, but this time we're going to say the source port is just port 80. That's just straight HTTP. If we were doing HTTPS, we would get 443, but we're not. So we're going to basically say any protocol, and we're going to say allow. So we'll click add. And then what it happens essentially is it's creating a security rule. That security rule will effectively just allow us to get in via port 80. So we see it's been created. Let's go back here and refresh. Your dogs are having a great time. So I've noticed that we're not coming up, and so I'm not really sure why. This is peculiar, because if we do this, let's do.
There we go.
Oh, wait.
I'm in. It just took a second.
Oh, okay. So if you're curious, the IP just hadn't been completely propagated into the security group just yet. It just took an extra second, but now our application's up, and what we can see is everything, the output to our actual use of this. If we just hit Control R, you'll see all the different types of HTTP codes that come up that show what we're doing. This rules, Brian.
So this is the development server. You can go in and you see the title of our thing is Hacker Slide. So let's change that to Jay and Brian. And then we just move off of that. You can see the slide changes real time. So if you're building slideshows like we do so often, this is just a godsend to be able to go back and change your slides and see them as you change them right in the same browser. So that's really cool. It also saves it in the local file system. So if we were to go back to our server and take a look, the Markdown file has already been changed here. So every time it saves, it's every time we make edits, it saves in the background using a WebSocket. And if you want to present from this, we just hit the present button, and I don't know if you see that all the way up at the top there on the left. Hit present, and now you've got a full slideshow without the source code, and you can type S in that window to get speaker notes. So it's a full managed. Isn't that great?
You made it just kind of like Google Slides. This is pretty wild. That's great. All right, so we've solved two problems so far, right? We needed a virtual machine to actually store to build our application to live on. We installed the application, the dependencies, which were Golang. We used Nginx, and then you started it. And what's great, if I'm right, these files can be served just as straight. If I'm right, you can static generate them and then just put them into HTML. So we could even.
Let's stop the server, and then if we type slides build, it's going to create a public directory. So now we have a public directory here, and we cd into public. There's an HTML index file that we can point Nginx at. So if we tell Nginx to serve talks Brian public as a different site or on a different port, then that has the index of our app. Do we have Python 3 on here?
Let's take a look. For those who are the uninitiated, if you ever want to find out where an application, or I should say a binary, is installed on your Linux VM or any Linux machine, you just type which, just a standard kind of Unix command. So if I want to see which go, which, there you go. So we've solved our two problems, but now I want to talk to you about one really kind of simple problem, but it's a problem nonetheless. So let's say, Brian, and let's bring it in for a second.
Bring it in.
We'll bring it in. Ooh, maybe let's try it like this. No. There. Now you got three of us. We're all here. We're together. I love this platform. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So we've done a few things so far. we've created a Linux server. We've created an application that runs as an application server. We've got a front end for HTTP that runs port 80. That's Nginx. It's essentially providing us with a simple server. And so what Brian's also done here, and I'll show you real quick, is he's gone ahead and actually started up a simple Python server and then serving just the documents as static. So just as much as like using HTML, a static site generator, he's doing essentially the same thing. So thank you very much. Let's talk about the next part, all right, Brian?
Sure. So what I did when we ran slides build, it creates a index page that has a list of all of your slideshows, and then a little bit of basic information about yourself, because sometimes when you're asked to give a talk, I don't know if you can see my screen here. Hang on a second. There we go.
All right, let me switch to you.
Thank you. There we go. Sometimes when you're asked to give a talk, people say, oh, you got to send us your bio. We need headshots. We need all of the stuff for the website. So there's a link right at the top, biography. And it's got my full bio. I've got a shorter bio, links to GitHub, Twitter, email, web, and a link to my headshot, which I have a gopher dropping a mic, because that's what I am. Mic dropping kind of gopher.
Very cool.
The other nice bit about this is that all of the slideshows that I've written that are in here are right in the front page listed in these little cards. So if you want to see the slideshow we were just playing with, it's right here. Hacker slides, hack together simple slides. And that's the one that we were just building.
Sweet.
So you can point people, you can register a domain like talks.j.com, and they can get to all of your talks.
Awesome. So let's solve our final problem. So let's say there was some sort of file system that we needed to share between our VMs, right? Like let's just say that there's a couple thousand files. Now we don't want to put these in object storage today. It's not the problem we want to solve today. We've done that before in a previous episode. And so what we want to do is we want to use just a standard Azure Files mount. This is a little bit more of an advanced kind of Linuxy and systems administrator kind of action that you would take. And essentially what we're going to do is use a giant file system. And that giant file system is going to attach ourselves. We're going to attach our virtual machine to this giant file system. And then we can attach as many Linux servers as we want so we can share those files together. Sound right?
Good.
Cool. So let's get this done. So the way we would start is we're in our VM demo virtual machine. We created a resource group that it lives within. And so what we're going to do is we can go into this resource group. And within this resource group, what we can do is create a storage account. And if we go ahead and we click add, this storage account can be where we create our new Azure files. So what we're going to do here is just type Azure
We're not
Files.
seeing your desktop if you're sharing, or if you're intending to share that.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Let's do this.
There you go.
So what we're going to do is use Azure Files. So we're in this VM demo virtual machine. Yes, I know. Sorry, no nonsense. I appreciate everyone catching me when I make my mistakes, and Brian, thank you as well. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this resource group. Within the resource group, what we'll do is we'll create a new resource. I know, sounds wild. Like I said, we'll click add. We'll click storage account. Cool. And then what it'll do is it'll give us the basically the marketplace overview. We click create. And within here, we're going to get the options of creating our storage group. I'm just going to call it something real simple. So we'll just call it Brian's files. Because let's say, Brian, you've got your files here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use standard performance. and that just means it's backed by magnetic drives and it's a lower cost. The account kind, it's going to be general purpose. What we can do is pick the kind of storage we want. And then the access tier is whether it's cool or hot. So cool means we're not going to be accessing these files very often, or hot means we are. And to be honest with you, we want to be able to access these files a bunch of times. So we'll go to networking. We're going to be using a public endpoint. We're going to be using a standard Microsoft routing. We'll get into what this all is a little bit more in the future. The blob, soft deletes and hard deletes, we're just going to leave all this as default. We'll go to enhance or the advanced stuff. And so Azure Files, we can do large file shares. It's not supported by this. It's okay. We'll go ahead and we'll click review and create. So this will create a storage account for us to then create our new giant file system. So I'll click create, and then it'll go through the part of sending all this information and basics over to Azure Resource Manager. And so Azure Resource Manager then takes all the requested things that we've made in this new deployment, and it will go ahead and create them. Sound good? So Brian, tell me about your history with stale file mounts.
With stale file mounts? I don't know how much history I have with stale file mounts.
Really? So I've had a lot of NFS servers that I've had to mess with in the past, right?
Oh, see, I used NFS once, and that was it. Never again.
So that's the great thing about this, is that what we did is we fixed NFS. We made NFS actually work well. And so what we did is we created this new storage account. And now if you who don't know it, NFS stands for Network File Systems. And so let's go ahead and create one. So we'll go here to File Shares. And what we can do is it'll just ask us to create a file share. I'll go ahead and I'll click New File Share. We'll give it a name. We'll call it Brian's Files. The quota is how big the files within there can be. We're going to give them a nice big 500, okay? You need a lot of files, right?
I do.
So now what we can do is we can connect this. So we'll go here to connect. And it's going to give us instructions on how to connect our virtual machine. So we have a Linux one. And we're going to create a mount point on this server that we're currently running this on. And we're just going to basically follow this. So let's see what it does really quick. It creates a directory. It adds the credentials that we need. And then it adds them. So let's go ahead. We'll click copy. And we'll just sudo in because we need to do this as root. We'll just copy in the command. What's going on here?
You're missing an end quote.
Oh, I see what's going on here. Let's try this again. Okay. So what it's basically doing is it went in here and it gave us all the instructions. Let's put it into a file so we can see it. Sorry.
Etsy FS tab.
I just wanted to show all the different things that happened. So what we did is we created a directory. We created a directory for our credentials. Then what we did was we copied the username and the password that Azure needs to actually connect to our new share. We stored them in a file. We made that file secure enough so that every single user on the system can't read it. Then after that, what we do is we mount it. And we make it available so that when the machine reboots, it will stay online. So let's go ahead and show everybody how it works now. So what we've got here is this Brian's Files directory, file system, whatever. And if we see here, there's this section right here called File Shares, Brian's Files. Right now, there's nothing in it. So let's put something in it, right? So we'll go to, why don't you give me something, Brian? Go for it. CD in to your new Brian's Files directory.
Where's it mounted at?
So, yep, just type mount.
Oops.
Okay.
All right, we've got a file.
Now let's go over here. In theory, there it is. And what we can do is you actually can look at the file here. We can download it. And so this is, there you go. That's the file that's now on the Linux server. It's now on my computer. What we can do is we can take this Linux server and like many others, we can just copy this same kind of SMB connection between them, and that's really it. So Brian, I think we've solved 3 problems today, and I think
solving problems.
And I think that means that we get to do the best part about when you fix and solve your problems with a demo.
Delete the resource group.
Exactly. And so I've always showed people the easy way we'll do is we'll exit out of the server, and then what we'll do is AZ group delete, and then we're going to say the name. And this one, it's AzureFunBytes. And then we'll say why do it. And then Azure
do it.
So that's really us finishing up. I'm going to put on a little bit of our going out of the room music, if you will. This is my little song I made for my friend Paul. I like it. But yeah, I think that's really it for today. I hope everybody had a nice time and learned something. If you have any questions before we get out of here, feel free to ask us. If you'd like to find us on Twitter, I think it's pretty easy. You can find me here at AzureFunBytes. And Brian, tell them where we can find everything about you.
At B Ketelsen, BKETELSEN.
Awesome. So I guess this is another AzureFunBytes. We'll see you next week. Thank you all so much for being part of it. Brian, thank you so much for being part of it. I really, really appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
We'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching AzureFunBytes.